I want to start with holiday travel. Looks like this was the busiest week for travel we've seen since the pandemic started. What will Thanksgiving mean for hospitalizations and deaths related to COVID in the coming weeks?
You know, it is difficult to accurately predict. It's really going to depend upon the individuals who traveled, whether they really listened to some extent and hopefully to a large extent about what my colleagues and I have been saying. I think we have to at least expect the likelihood that we will see a blip or a bit of a surge superimposed upon the current surge that antedated the Thanksgiving holiday. We hope it is not substantial, but I'm afraid that there's a reasonable chance, given the volume of travel that we've seen reported on TV and in other media, the millions of people at airports and train stations. I think there is a considerable risk that a couple to 3 weeks from now, we might start seeing yet again another surge. Because what was happening in some states, Gabe, is that I remember the last time we spoke, I told you that the slope was very steep. In some states that were mitigating, we were starting to see a little bit of a deflection from that inflection. I hope that continues, but I'm afraid it may, go back up again. We'll just have to wait and see.
What are hospitals potentially about to face?
Well, if you look at the reports from hospitals throughout the country, particularly some, for example, in the Northern Plains and in some of the heartland, that many of these, and I know because I've had the opportunity over the Thanksgiving weekend to speak to some of these people, talking about the fact that they're at that critical point of getting literally pushed over the top, of running out of beds, or even more importantly than beds, because you always have beds shipped in, is personnel, particularly skilled intensive care personnel.
And when you hit that capacity, what does that mean for the people who need treatment, people who are dying?
Well, hopefully you can get assistance from other areas of the country. I mean, that's what's happened before, where you have gotten patients that don't need intensive care, maybe getting shipped out to places that would then free up within that given hospital the personnel and the capability. I mean, obviously, everyone wants to avoid the extent possible being in a situation where you're going to have to make critical choices about people's lives. And that's something we have not had to do yet. Hopefully we'll not get there, but we're perilously close to that in some regions.
So the people who traveled for Thanksgiving, should they be tested this week and should they be isolating for 2 weeks?
You know, there's no strict rule about that, Gabe. If someone is coming back into a situation where they will expose themselves to persons who are in a category of high risk, you might want to get tested. You might want to come back, quarantine yourself for a few days, get tested, and figure that you're okay, at least for now. But I don't think every single person needs to do that.
Do you think states need harsher restrictions ahead of Christmas?
You know, it's going to vary among states. I know because over the holiday, as I had mentioned on one of my media appearances, that I had a couple of calls from health authorities in different states trying to bounce off me my opinion of whether or not they should institute harsher restrictions, like selected types of lockdowns, not countrywide lockdowns, but saying for a particular city or a particular town in which it's clear, looks like they're overrunning their health system. Maybe the only thing you want to do or could do is a temporary 2 or 3 week shutdown to try and relieve the burden. But that's not something that you want to universally recommend for the country.
But do you think, given how many Americans did not listen to recommendations from experts, that states need to be harsher ahead of another holiday where potentially millions of Americans are not going to be as careful as they need to be?
Well, you know, Gabe, they should at least consider that. You know, one of the things you got to be careful about when you're dealing with as large a country as the United States, so many states, so many cities, so many towns, that you want to be careful about making blanket strong recommendations. To say, though, in agreement with what I think you're suggesting, that states and cities should at least consider that. If it looks like everything they've said, everything they've tried has not worked, and they are on the brink of being overrun, if that is the case, then they should seriously consider some more stringent recommendations.